Elena, wearing a custom wedding dress worth $20 million, was smugly showing the camera the Imperial Sun ring when I sneered and pressed the remote. The priceless diamond immediately activated its self-destruct sequence. A searing, intense light singed her skin. I stepped on her broken crown and looked down coldly at her as she wet herself from terror. Cousin, since you like stealing so much, I've helped you steal the prison you'll spend this life in. Welcome to the show. The exciting story is about to begin. If life were a movie, the scene I'm in now would definitely have the most humiliating filter applied to it. Hold him down. Don't let this filthy thief get away. With Sterling Pierce's brutal roar, 2 professional bodyguards, each at least 200 pounds, lunged like hungry tigers and pinned me hard to the cold marble floor. My cheek pressed against the expensive Italian tiles, each one worth $5,000, and now they greedily soaked up the hot blood flowing from my nostrils. This is the Thorne family's estate in Connecticut, where tonight a top-tier banquet is being held to celebrate the return of the Empire Sun Diamond. The smell of champagne, the expensive perfumes on the women, and those nauseating false laughs that should belong to this high society revelry have now become my public execution field. Jaxson, I truly can't believe it. Elena Thorne glided up to me with an elegant catwalk. Her $30 million diamond-encrusted gown flashed blindingly under the lights. She pinched a silk handkerchief in her hand and covered her nose with disgust, as if I were exuding some kind of plague. Grandfather took you in as an orphan, paid for your Ivy League education, and left you a place in the family trust. And you, tonight, in front of so many dignitaries, you stole the family's lifeblood. She slowly pulled the Empire Sun, which emitted an eerie red glow, out of the inner pocket of my suit. The hall erupted. Countless looks of contempt, anger, and schadenfreude stabbed at me like knives. I didn't take it. I bit down, the metallic taste of blood clearing my head. Elena, you slipped it in when you deliberately bumped into me 5 minutes ago. You've been rehearsing this little play for a long time, haven't you? Shut up, you hopeless parasite. Sterling strode over, his custom leather-soled shoe driving hard into my abdomen. A shock of pain washed through my nerves. It felt like my intestines were about to snap. He bent down, grabbed my hair and hauled me up. His alcohol-scented face leaned close as he sneered. Jaxson, you always thought you were special, didn't you? Thought the old man favored you? Look at you now, you're just a thief caught red-handed. In the Thorne family, thieves have only one fate. He swung his right fist suddenly. The brass knuckles flashed coldly in the light. Crack! That was the sound of my ribs breaking. I was hurled like a bag of trash, smashing into the champagne tower stacked nearby. Hundreds of expensive glasses shattered across the floor, golden wine soaking my entire body. I lay there among the shards of glass, like a stray dog with a broken leg. From this moment on, Jaxson Thorne is formally expelled from the family. Sterling stood on high, holding up the diamond worth more than $100 million, announcing to everyone, all his trust funds, bank accounts, properties, all are confiscated. From now on, he will not find work anywhere on the North American continent. Anyone who dares to help him will be an enemy of mine. Sterling Pierce. Scattered applause rose around me, obsequious flattery of power. I felt my consciousness beginning to blur. But at that moment my fingertips brushed the small inconspicuous piece of black metal that Elena had slipped into my pocket earlier, and that had fallen to the floor, part of the diamond's setting. The moment my blood dripped onto that piece of metal, a deep, mechanical-sounding voice that only I could hear detonated in my mind. Detected Thorne family direct bloodline, biological signature match successful. Ancient heirloom defense system, Atlas has been activated. Detected heir suffering a lethal attack. Initiating defense protocol. Current geographic location, Thorne Manor. Taking control of all power facilities and security networks within a 1 kilometer radius. I froze. What system? What Atlas? Before I could even react, the once brightly lit manor hall plunged into absolute darkness without any warning. What's happening? Is the power out? Elena's scream tore through the darkness. Damn it, where's the backup generator? Sterling roared. Amidst the chaos, a pale blue translucent screen that only I could see appeared before my eyes. Countless data points flickered across it, bank transfer records, satellite surveillance feeds, and even secret directives from the Pentagon all the way in Washington. Directive 1. Seal off all entrances to the estate. Directive 2. Freeze the personal accounts of everyone on site. Directive 3. Send the highest order message to Global President Dominic Vance. The Supreme Council. Leader has returned. The mechanical voice grew more solemn. Leader Jaxson, the world's winding mechanism is now in your hand. Do you wish to annihilate them immediately? Or do you prefer to toy with these arrogant ants a while longer? I clenched through the agony and slowly sat up in the darkness. I could feel every cell in my body resonating with this vast underground empire. I looked at Sterling and Elena in the distance, flailing in panic, and the last trace of my orphanly weakness was completely erased. No, don't be so quick to destroy things, I whispered into the void, a cruel curve forming at the corner of my mouth. If they want to play the betrayal game, then I'll play it big, turn on the manor's backup power, but leave me only one way out. The next moment, The side door behind me burst open, and a faint light guided me out into the driving rain. Jackson's there. Get him! Sterling shouted in the dark, but I had already vanished into the curtain of rain. Sterling, Elena, you think taking a $100 million diamond means you've won? You have no idea. You just handed the key to hell back to the master of hell with your own hands. The torrential rain was like countless icy whips, lashing my face hard. I stumbled through the impeccably trimmed shrubs on the outskirts of the Thorne estate. Every breath made my broken ribs burn as if set aflame. But this pain was nothing compared to the pale blue screen that kept pulsing in my mind. Warning, leader vital signs declining. Planning optimal evacuation route. The Atlas system's emotionless yet oddly reassuring voice echoed in my ear. Security monitoring blind spots around the manor have been activated. Your personal evacuation vehicle is 300 meters ahead. I leaned against a huge oak, gasping, palms covered in mud and blood spread open. The unassuming black metal shard was emitting a faint bluish glow now, as if alive and resonating in time with my pulse. What the hell is this thing? I spat a mouthful of blood and muttered, answering the leader's question. The Imperial Sun. Diamond is merely a dazzling shell to deceive people. The black metal in your hand is the quantum key of the Supreme Council's highest authority. Personally forged by your grandfather Celes Thorne. Only the true bloodline of the Thorne family can awaken it. My grandfather who died. That old man who was always taciturn in the family and ended up leaving all the visible assets to that idiot Sterling? So it turns out he left the world's entire dark web trump card to me. The orphan despised by everyone. If that's the case, Atlas, show me what this thing can actually do. I grit my teeth and straightened up in the rain. Sterling's kick had not only broken my rib just now, it had also shattered the last ridiculous shred of attachment I had left for this family. At your command, leader. Detection indicates pursuers are assembling. Initiate phase 1 of the Scorched Earth Protocol? Initiate. Let them have plenty of time to reflect in the dark. No sooner had I finished speaking than the ground under Connecticut seemed to emit a low, rumbling roar. It wasn't an illusion. I watched the distant city skyline with my own eyes, the flashing neon, the lights of towering buildings, even the highway lamps that ran across the state, and in that instant, as if an invisible hand of God had suddenly cut the power, they all went dark. Bang, bang, bang. Several miles away, several large substations simultaneously erupted in blinding blue arcs of electricity, the sparks blooming like a grand fireworks display in the night sky. The state capital of Connecticut and its surrounding areas were plunged into complete, death-like darkness in less than 3 seconds. The regional grid has been completely paralyzed. The city's surveillance system has been forcibly taken over, and traffic lights are locked. Your presence has been erased from the world. Atlas reported mechanically. The whole city went dark. In an instant. Is this the legacy my grandfather left me? A terrifying power that can directly roll modern civilization back to the Stone Age. I couldn't help but laugh. The laughter sounded crazier than ever in the downpour. Sterling and Elena are surely cowering right now in that multi-million-dollar vault on the estate, clutching that worthless, glow-only rock, thinking they'd become rulers of the world. Oh, Sterling, my dear cousin, if you knew that what you just desperately snatched was merely a $100 million glass orb, while what I hold is the control that could buy the entire United States, your expression would be priceless. I wiped the rain from my face. Ahead, accompanied by a deep roar of the engine, a pitch-black, license plate-free armored Night 15 SUV, like a steel behemoth, pulled up precisely in front of me without its lights on. The door popped open automatically. There was no driver inside. Only the dashboard glowed with that same pale blue light. Leader, the medical system is ready inside the vehicle and is navigating you to Safe House 1. I forced myself into the cabin. A warm, dry air immediately enveloped me. Mechanical arms in the back automatically extended and injected powerful analgesics and bone-fixing gel into my wounds. The agony receded like a tide within seconds, replaced by an unprecedented surge of strength. The SUV began smoothly through the gale and downpour, moving like a ghost through the paralyzed city streets. Outside the window were panicked citizens, traffic honking wildly but barely moving, and wealthy people screaming as they fled in all directions. Because of a single word from me, the whole city had plunged into an unprecedented apocalyptic crisis. Atlas, I leaned back against the top-grade leather seat, watching Sterling's frantic face live on the screen. Take control of all the city's automated defense weapons. Tonight, anyone who dares come within half a step of my safe house, vaporize them on the spot. Order confirmed. The city's defense network is online, and the Grim Reaper is in position. The game has only just begun. Safe House number 1 wasn't the kind of dim basement I had imagined. Instead, the SUV drove into a private equestrian estate on the outskirts of Greenwich, and after passing through a seemingly ordinary barn, the entire floor began to descend silently. It was a top-tier command center buried 100 meters underground. By the time I stepped out of the car, I could feel no pain. The rapid repair gel inside the vehicle had mended my ribs in just 20 minutes. If that technology ever reached the market, it would be enough to put all the top medical giants out of business in a single day. Leader, welcome home. As the hall lights came up in stages, I saw before me a gigantic wall made of countless transparent display panels. What pulsed across it wasn't stock market prices, but the heartbeat of the entire world. Report to the leader. All core assets under the Supreme Council have been secured. You now directly control 30 private mercenary organizations, including the Polaris Defense Company, with total forces exceeding 200,000. Secret accounts controlled by Vanguard Finance hold a combined balance of over 90 quadrillion, capable at any time of launching a saturation attack on any global economy. I stood before that wall, staring at those mind-boggling numbers, my mind going blank for a moment. 9 quadrillion? Is this the secret agreement grandfather left me? To those arrogant members of the Thorne family, who fought to the death over hundreds of billions in family trust funds, little do they know that that money doesn't even count as a rounding error on the Supreme Council's ledgers. Leader, the system has sent the return code to the councils. 5 constables. Atlas's voice took on a hint of fanaticism. The first responder has appeared. Global CEO Dominic Vance is attempting to pay his respects to you via an encrypted channel. I raised an eyebrow and walked to the center to sit in the chair carved from a single slab of obsidian. Bring them in. The center of the screen flickered, and a middle-aged man in a suit, radiating authority, appeared. Under normal circumstances I would only see him on the cover of Time, or in a broadcast from the Davos Forum. He controlled more than half of the world's multinational trade. A single sentence from him could completely collapse the currency of a small country. But at this moment, this Dominic Vance, who stirred winds and waves across the globe, upon seeing me, did something unexpected. He humbly lowered his head across the screen and folded his hands over his chest. Great leader, after 20 years, the Supreme Council has finally welcomed its master again. Dominic's voice trembled slightly. It wasn't acting, it was fear and reverence carved into his bones. Dominic, do you still remember my grandfather? I leaned back in my chair and casually picked up a pre-cut Cuban cigar from the table and lit it. Leader Selassie is my mentor and my god. Without the Thorne family's secret pact, I would just be a frozen vagrant on the streets of Wall Street. All my glory belongs to you, my lord. I exhaled a stream of blue smoke and sneered. Good. Since you still remember that loyalty, I'll give you your first order. My dear cousin Sterling Pierce just announced to the whole world from Connecticut that he intends to strip me of everything and make sure I can't find work. Tell me, how do you think I should respond to this kindness? Dominic on the other side of the screen froze for a moment. Then a flash of ruthlessness passed through his eyes. Leader, that idiot courting death has no idea whom he's challenging. With a single word from you, I can turn all of Sterling's shares into worthless paper within 3 minutes. I can make this so-called wealth empire of the Thorne family owe the world's banks over 100 billion in unrepayable debt before the sun rises tomorrow. No, that's too fast. Boring. I watched the live feed from Atlas showing the Thorne estate. On screen, Sterling was leading a group of bodyguards, sweeping the rainforest with emergency flashlights as they searched for me. His once handsome face was twisted with anger and fear. Elena clutched the diamond tightly, hiding like a miser by the vault door. I want them to watch themselves fall into the abyss bit by bit. Dominic, first freeze all of the Thorne family's liquid assets in Swiss banks. Cite suspected support of international terrorism as the reason. Also, halt that recent $20 billion Gulf oil development project Sterling is involved in. I want him to wake up tomorrow morning to a breach of contract claim from his partners. At your command, leader. Dominic drew a deep breath. So, do you want me to announce your identity to the public? No. Right now I'm just a fugitive. A diamond thief. I gave the screen a cruel smile. The night after tomorrow, isn't there a charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York? Sterling and Elena will surely flaunt that diamond. When the time comes, I will appear before them in a way they could never even dream of. Understood. I'll arrange everything for you. Dominic backed away respectfully and cut the connection. I turned off the screen, and the command center sank back into its soft blue glow. Leader, shall I prepare dinner for you? Atlas asked. Bring me a bottle of 1982 Lafite. And then check for me which public fund was embezzled to buy Elena's 30 million dress. I will tear that layer of her false skin with my own hands at the banquet. I walked to the huge floor-to-ceiling window and looked down at Manhattan, its contours still sharp even in the blackout. Sterling, Elena, enjoy your last 24 hours of superiority, for when the banquet bell rings, the sole king of this world will formally come to exact blood from you. In the cold control hall, I took a deep drag of my Cuban cigar, letting the spicy, full-bodied smoke swirl in my lungs before slowly exhaling. Leader, the Supreme Council's reboot protocol is ready. Atlas's voice echoed through the cavernous hall with an unquestionable solemnity. We require a drop of your blood in your retinal scan. This is not merely to verify your identity, but to bind the entire Earth's shadow power map to you permanently. I walked to the obsidian control console in the center of the hall. A metal cylinder emitting a ghostly blue light rose slowly from beneath the surface, its top a hemispherical glass basin. Without hesitation, I pressed my thumb down. Hiss, a faint sting came, and an extremely thin alloy steel needle pierced my skin. At the same time, a soft red laser swept across my eyes, recording the unique vascular pattern at the back of my eyes. Blood sample collection successful. DNA sequence match. 100% concordance. Retinal feature match. Confirmed. Reboot protocol officially initiated. Transferring final control of the secret trust accounts of the world's 5 major offshore financial centers, 8 private defense conglomerates, and 42 sovereign states to the leader's personal quantum account. The data on the screen began to scroll wildly at a speed the human eye couldn't catch. Golden threads representing countless wealth and resources intertwined on the holographic globe, ultimately converging on the point where I stood. In that moment, I could clearly feel that I was holding the throat of this world. With a gentle squeeze, the financial systems of multiple countries could collapse in an instant. Report to the leader. Asset migration complete. The unlimited cash you can currently access directly is $1.2 trillion. In addition, the Reaper orbital satellite network under the Supreme Council has granted you maximum privileges and can execute precise energy strikes on any coordinates on Earth at any time. $1.2 trillion. It's a number that makes one want to laugh. My greedy cousin Sterling. For the sake of a mere $100 million in diamonds and a $20 billion family trust, didn't hesitate to try to kill me. If he knew what kind of true god he was pushing away with his own hands tonight, I wonder whether he would have bitten his own tongue off on the spot. Atlas, switch the feed to my dear cousin. I want to see what he's up to right now. I sat back in the obsidian chair and leisurely crossed my legs. At your command. The screen flashed, showing Thorne Manor's private study, which had once been resplendent but now could only be lit by a few weak emergency lights. Sterling paced the room like a beast trapped in a cage. His suit was streaked with sweat and mud. His tie askew, seated at his desk. Several executives in suits wiped cold sweat from their brows and reported with trembling voices. What do you mean the funds are frozen? That's $40 million. It's the guarantee I need to pay for the Gulf Oil project tomorrow. Sterling slammed his fist on the table, producing a series of harsh crashes. Are the people at the Swiss bank out of their minds? They actually said my account is suspected of terrorist financing? This is the most ridiculous joke of the century. Mr. Pierce, it's not just the Swiss bank. The finance director's voice trembled like a leaf in a storm. All 5 of our trust accounts in the Cayman Islands and Panama were added to the World Bank Association's high-risk watch list 10 minutes ago. Now we can't transfer a single cent, assholes. All of them are assholes. Sterling grabbed the crystal ashtray from the desk and hurled it against the wall, shattering it. Call Dominic Vance. He's the global president. One word from him will make the World Bank reverse this stupid decision. Go! Watching Sterling on the screen, raging impotently like a clown, I couldn't help but laugh. Oh, Sterling, you should see yourself right now. I raised my wine glass toward the screen. You want Dominic to help? What a pity. He's now booking like everyone else just to be my driver. Leader, Atlas's voice sounded at the right moment. Per your instructions, I've traced the source of the $30 million dress payment for Elena. As you suspected, the money did not come from her personal trust. A clear diagram of the funds flow popped up on the screen. A week ago, Elena secretly embezzled $30 million from the Little Angels Children's Cancer Foundation managed by the Thorne family by forging signatures and falsifying accounts. The funds were laundered through 3 offshore shell companies and ultimately paid to a haute couture dress atelier in Paris. What's more, using similar methods, she has siphoned off more than $80 million in donations from the foundation over the past 3 years. My expression went cold in an instant. Embezzling life-saving money meant for children with cancer to buy a vanity dress? I had thought Elena was merely malicious and selfish, but I never expected she would lack even the most basic human decency. This is no longer just a family grudge. This is pure evil. Very well. I stood up, a cold light flickering in my eyes. Atlas, take this evidence, along with her transaction records with the Paris workshop and the registration details of those shell companies, and compile them into an encrypted file that cannot be forged. At the charity gala the night after tomorrow, under the world spotlight, I will strip away her venomous mask for everyone to see. Understood. The dossier is secured. Also, Dominic Vance has already prepared an identity for you to attend the dinner the night after tomorrow. Supreme Council. Special Ultimate Inspector. At that time, Global CEO Dominic will personally hold the car door for you. I walked to the dressing room and looked at the person in the mirror who had been completely transformed. There was no longer any of the previous confusion or forbearance in my eyes. Instead, there was an abyssal chill and overwhelming dominance. Sterling, Elena, enjoy your last day playing nobility among mortals, because the night after tomorrow, I'll make you understand what it means to be unable to beg for life and unable to beg for death. I sneered and tore off the blood-stained old suit, replacing it with a dark gold trench coat woven from a silk, carbon fiber blend, bulletproof and unbearably elegant. Night was at its thickest, and the first act of my revenge play had already begun. 2 nights later, the Metropolitan Museum of Art in Manhattan, the annual Starlight Charity Gala was being held here. It was more than just an ordinary dinner. It was a top-tier power bacchanal for New York and indeed America's high society. Only those worth over $1 billion, or who held absolute sway in political and business circles, were eligible to receive that gold foil invitation. Tonight's focus, without a doubt, is the Thorne family, through Atlas's drone surveillance. I saw Sterling and Elena standing on the museum's grand, gilded staircase in the main hall, like a true king and queen, receiving the frenzied adoration of hundreds of socialites and reporters. Elena was wearing that crime-stained, $30 million diamond-studded gown, with the very imperial sun that sparked all this disaster pinned at her chest. Its dazzling glow made her look radiant as she flashed a perfect fake smile at the countless camera flashes. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming tonight. Sterling stood at the microphone, face flushed with triumph, showing none of the panic he displayed 2 days ago in the mansion during the blackout. Tonight, not only do I present to you our family's recovered treasure, the Imperial Sun, but I also have an exciting announcement. The Thorne family is ready to lead global capital into a brand new era. Thunderous applause erupted from the audience. The Wall Street bigwigs raised their glasses one after another to toast this self-styled king of wealth. Sterling had no idea that what he now possessed was nothing more than an extremely ornate shell. Atlas, I said, sitting in a black Rolls-Royce Phantom parked in the shadow across from the museum, staring at the holographic screen in my hand. What's happened to his $20 billion trust fund? Leader, per your orders, over the past 48 hours we have, through high-frequency quantitative trading, perfectly transferred all of Sterling's funds from both public and hidden accounts into the Supreme Council's dark pool. Meanwhile, we used leverage to saddle several of his shell companies with more than $100 billion in subordinated debt. At present, he is not only penniless but the most indebted person on this planet. I smiled satisfyingly. Good. It's time to end this fake coronation. Dominic, it's our turn. I rolled down the car window and nodded to Dominic Vance, standing outside like a loyal old butler. This global CEO, whose every stomping could quake Wall Street, immediately bowed respectfully and opened the car door for me. I stepped out of the carriage. My handcrafted dress shoes made a faint sound as they hit the damp asphalt. I was wearing a black haute couture suit devoid of any brand logos, woven from the finest Peruvian alpaca and bulletproof fibers. No excess accessories, only an obsidian pin on my chest symbolizing the Supreme Council's highest authority, emitting a chilling glow in the night. When Dominic and I walked side by side through the museum's main entrance, the once noisy hall fell silent in an instant. Everyone's attention was first drawn to Dominic. After all, the global president personally attending a dinner of this level was unprecedented. Countless reporters, wielding long lenses and heavy cameras, tried to rush forward, but were stopped about 5 meters away by the dozens of North Star mercenaries at the door, wearing black tactical vests and carrying live weapons. Then their gazes shifted from Dominic to my face. My God, is that Mr. Dominic Vance? Why is he here? Who is that young man beside him? Wait, that young man? Could it be Jaxson Thorne? Didn't they say a few days ago he was expelled from the family for theft? Are you crazy? Look at how Dominic Vance treats him. He's practically acting as that young man's bodyguard. Sounds of sharp intake of breath and stifled exclamations erupted from the crowd. Sterling had been basking in everyone's adulation, but when he saw me appear at the gate, the smile on his face froze instantly, as if he'd swallowed a dead fly. Jaxson? Sterling's face went ashen in an instant. He hurried down the stairs, pointed a finger at my nose and shouted, "You damn thief! How dare you show your face here? Security! Where are the guards? Throw him out!" A few senior museum guards instinctively wanted to step forward, but were frozen in place by a single cold look from Dominic. Sterling Piers? Dominic's voice was not loud, yet it echoed through the entire hall, carrying the absolute contempt of a superior for an ant. "You dare speak to my lord in that tone? Do you think you have too much time left to live?" Silence fell over the whole arena. My lord? Sterling sounded as if he'd heard an alien word. He looked at Dominic, then at me, his face full of disbelief. "Mr. Dominic, have you been fooled by this con? He's just an orphan from our family. A thief with dirty hands." "Thief?" I sneered, pacing slowly to Sterling's side, looking at his face contorted with fear and rage. "Sterling, have you never checked the balance in your account? Do you really think you own $20 billion? I snapped my fingers, and Atlas immediately breached the museum's control system. The giant screen that had been looping the Thorne family promotional video flickered and was replaced by an asset liquidation statement issued by a Swiss bank, bearing the highest level of electronic signature. The name on it was Sterling Pierce, and in the balance column, it glaringly read, negative $105 billion. What does this mean? Sterling's eyes were fixed on that huge minus sign, his voice sharp as a eunuch's. "This can't be. This is forged. I have $20 billion in my trust. This is real. Sterling." Dominic took a thick stack of papers from his briefcase and slammed them onto Sterling's face. "In the past 48 hours, all your assets have been forcibly liquidated for extremely egregious defaults. Now you're not just bankrupt, you owe the world's banks over $100 billion. By the way, the suit you're wearing, even the shoes under your feet, have been listed as collateral. Sterling's face instantly went as white as paper, and he collapsed like a puddle of mud on the marble steps. I looked down on him from above, as if watching a stray dog wagging its tail and begging for mercy. Cousin, it seems your coronation has ended prematurely. No, this is impossible. You're committing fraud. It's a cyber attack. Sterling slumped onto the steps, clawing at his hair in a frenzy. The carefully styled coiffure now resembled a bird's nest. He suddenly fumbled for his phone, his fingers trembling as he dialed a few well-worn numbers. Pick up. Richard, check the Goldman accounts for me. Answered the phone, but only mechanical voice prompts replied. He didn't know that every contact number for financial executives in his address book had been completely cut off at the routing level by Atlas 2 hours earlier. No, in this world, he was a financial corpse. Don't bother, Sterling. I stepped in front of him and nudged the document he dropped with the toe of my bespoke leather shoe. Even if you can make a call right now, they'll tell you that the FBI and Interpol have both issued red notices for you on suspicion of forging business contracts, large-scale money laundering, and illegal fundraising. The room fell deathly silent. The Wall Street sharks who had just been toasting Sterling now recoiled as if avoiding the plague. A few quick ones were even discreetly wiping possible fingerprints off their wine glasses. Jaxson, you devil! What did you do to me? Sterling's eyes were bloodshot as he glared at me, like a desperate mad dog ready to lunge. Before he could get close, Dominic Vance merely lifted his hands slightly. Two burly Polaris mercenaries appeared behind Sterling like phantoms, one on each side, wrenching his arms behind him. There was a crisp crack, the sound of dislocated joints. Ah! Sterling let out a pig-slaughtering shriek and fell to his knees like a lump of mud. I ignored his wails and turned my head to look at Elena, who had been standing at the top of the steps and now looked dreadfully pale. She was still wearing that $30 million diamond-studded evening gown, the imperial sun pinned to her chest. But that war robe that once made her the envy of all now seemed like a heavy shackle. She stared at me, her eyes full of disbelief and deep fear. Jaxson, you, who are you? Really? Elena's voice trembled so much she couldn't finish a sentence. Who am I? I'm the orphan you framed for stealing the diamond. The one you drove out of the house in the pouring rain like a dog. My dear cousin. I smiled slightly. There was not a hint of warmth in that smile. But since you like this, imperial son, so much, and enjoy playing the thief in the limelight, I have prepared a special gift for you. I snapped my fingers. Atlas immediately switched the display on the holographic screen. This time what appeared was no longer a dull financial report but an extremely clear surveillance video. It was from a hidden corner of the Thorne Manor's banquet hall 3 days earlier. In the footage, Elena is seen stealthily removing the red glowing imperial sun from a safe, then carefully tucking it into the small clutch she always carries. Then the scene cuts, and at the start of the party Elena deliberately pretends to trip so she can throw herself into my arms. In the slow-motion replay and high-definition close-up, everyone clearly sees how deftly she slid that diamond into my suit pocket. My God! So she really framed him. It's the thief crying stop the thief. I always said Master Jaxson is so low-key. How could he do something like this? How vicious, just to seize the inheritance. She stoops to such dirty tricks. The crowd immediately exploded. Those looks of contempt that had been aimed at me now stabbed at Elena like swords. No, that's fake. That's an AI-generated video, Elena screamed, trying to cover the huge screen with her hands. This ridiculous gesture only made her look more laughable and guilty in everyone's eyes. Fake? I snorted. Atlas once again threw up a string of ironclad evidence on the screen. Then are these overseas account transfer records fake too? Rows of shocking figures appeared on the screen. 5 million, 10 million, 20 million. All the sources of the funds pointed to the same account, the Little Angels Children's Cancer Foundation run by the Thorne family. And the final destinations of the money were luxury ateliers in Paris and Milan, and several secret overseas mansions. You stole a full $80 million of life-saving money from the hands of those children with leukemia and bone cancer over the past 3 years. My voice echoed through the museum hall like thunder, laced with uncontrollable fury. How many children's lives were traded for that $30 million dress you're wearing? You're standing here today wearing that $100 million rock, when you sleep at night. Don't you hear those children crying? Shut up! Shut up! Elena completely collapsed. She clapped her hands over her ears and screamed on the steps like a madwoman. You like taking what doesn't belong to you, don't you? I climbed the steps one by one, like death closing in. I reached out and snatched the dazzling imperial sun from her chest. Crunch! I tore that $1 million platinum necklace clean off. Elena, carried by momentum, fell heavily onto the steps. The expensive evening gown had been ripped open by a huge gash, leaving her in a humiliating state. This stone never belonged to you. I held the diamond in my hand, looking down at her coldly. Atlas, call the police. Notify the FBI Financial Crimes Division and the NYPD. I want them to take the thief who stole life-saving money and the fraudster who carries hundreds of billions in debt away immediately. In less than 3 minutes, the shrill wail of sirens sounded outside the museum. A large contingent of fully armed FBI agents stormed into the hall. When they saw Dominic Vance standing at my side, the lead agent visibly hesitated, then respectfully nodded and strode straight toward the wailing Sterling on the floor and the utterly dazed Elena. Sterling Piers? Elena Thorne? You are under arrest. The cold handcuffs clicked shut around their once exalted wrists. As the agent dragged Elena past me like a dead dog, she suddenly lifted her head. Her delicate face was distorted beyond recognition by sheer terror. Jaxson, please, for my grandfather's sake, she cried, snot and tears mingling on her face. I bent slightly and whispered in her ear. Cousin, since you like stealing so much, I'll steal a prison cell for you in this lifetime. Enjoy your remaining life. In there, watching Sterling and Elena being roughly dragged out of the hall by security like two drowned dogs, I tossed the $100 million Imperial Sun in my hand without a care. This stone that drove countless people to madness reflected a cold light under gravity. Once, it was the evidence that nailed me to the pillory of shame. Now, it was just a toy I fiddled with when bored. The New York socialites in the hall all held their breath, not daring to draw a breath. Those guys who normally command the winds and waves on Wall Street and act as if they own the world looked at me now as if they were staring at a deity about to unleash divine punishment. What? Is the banquet over already? I looked around, a teasing smile at the corner of my mouth. Where's the music? The champagne? Isn't tonight a charity gala? No one dared answer me. Just then, the huge holographic projection screen in the center of the museum flickered violently. The footage that had been showing the arrest scene was cut off, replaced by a spacious, lavish conference room. It was the top-floor boardroom of the Thorne family's Manhattan headquarters. On the screen, a middle-aged man with graying hair, wearing a haute couture suit, was furiously shouting into the phone. He was Marcus Thorne, my uncle, and the Thorne family's publicly recognized true power. In the years when my grandfather and I were marginalized, he was the ultimate instigator who tacitly allowed Sterling and Elena to run rampant behind the scenes. Activate the contingency plan. Immediately mortgage our 3 Manhattan towers, and transfer that $3 billion offshore fund in the Cayman Islands to Switzerland at once. Marcus's voice, transmitted through the sound system, echoed with perfect clarity through every corner of the museum hall. Obviously, he had no idea that Atlas had been live-streaming his every move worldwide. Uncle, are you looking for that money? I whispered into the void. Dominic Vance immediately understood and tapped lightly on the tablet beside him. The next second, the big screen in the boardroom lit up as well, directly connecting to my video feed. Marcus in the picture whipped his head around, and when he saw me standing in the center of the museum with Global President Dominic at my side, his eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. Jaxson, how are you there, Mr. Dominic Vance? Why are you standing with this thief? Marcus yelled through the screen. Marcus, the thief you speak of is the sole legal heir of the Supreme Council and also the only leader of my Dominic Vance. Dominic looked at him coldly, his eyes full of contempt. This is impossible. How could that old immortal Silas leave the Supreme Council to him? Marcus was completely panic-stricken. He knew what the Supreme Council meant, a behemoth that could erase the Thorne family in minutes. Uncle Marcus, the $3 billion you mentioned just now has officially been renamed the Global Relief Fund for Abused Children. I smiled at him. As for your 3 buildings, due to severe fire hazards and illegal construction issues, they were jointly sealed by New York City Hall 1 minute ago. You bastard! How dare you! Atlas, mute his microphone. He's too loud, I said lightly. On the screen, Marcus immediately became a pantomime actor. He furiously banged the table, veins bulging, but not a sound came out. Then the boardroom doors were suddenly slammed open and a group of special mercenaries in black tactical vests with the North Star emblem on their chests stormed in. And within seconds they had knocked down every board member, Marcus included. I turned away, no longer watching that one-sided, unsurprising trouncing. Dominic, send the notice. Tomorrow at 8 in the morning. I want a general shareholders meeting at Thorne headquarters. I tossed the Imperial Sun into a nearby trash can filled with champagne with a crisp clink. What's my grandfather's will be? It's time to take it all back, leaving nothing behind. At the center of the screen, the crimson stream of data finally coalesced into a name, and a face of an elderly man with gold-rimmed glasses and a cultivated, gentle demeanor. Carl von Thorne. I toyed with the dulled Imperial Sun, put the name on the tip of my tongue, and chewed it once with a cold taste. My lord, it's him? Dominic looked at the screen, and a rare flash of shock crossed his usually composed face. Your own uncle, the one who was ennobled as a baron in Europe and hailed as the last classical philanthropist of the old continent. Carl, didn't he renounce the family inheritance and retire to Switzerland 20 years ago? Retirement? That's a fairy tale told to fools. I walked up to the obsidian console, my gaze cold as ice. 20 years ago, the accidental avalanche that killed my parents in the Alps was engineered by him together with Sterling's grandfather, in order to prevent the family from being torn apart. Chose to endure and hid the Sterling family in the United States while exiling Carl to Europe. I sneered and tossed the diamond onto the table. Grandfather thought that giving them wealth and honor would quell their greed. But he forgot that beasts are never satisfied. On the surface, Carl presents himself as a world-weary aristocrat. But behind the scenes, he's been using the Thorne family's resources to feed the Order of Hermits, plotting to one day swallow the entire Supreme Council. Then, my lord, how shall we strike back? Dominic's expression turned fierce in an instant. I'll order the 3 special brigades of Polaris, stationed in Europe, to assemble in Switzerland immediately. No, mobilizing troops is too slow and too dull. I lifted my wrist and checked the time. The European markets open in 2 hours. Atlas, what are the core industries under Carl's control? Report to the leader. Carl von Thorne currently effectively controls Europe's 3 largest energy oligopolies and monopolizes half of the EU with Rhine Heavy Industries. Total assets amount to approximately $700 billion. 700 billion, barely enough for an amuse-bouche. I sat back on the obsidian throne. Atlas, deploy the Sovereign Council's dark pool funds. At the first second the European markets open, I want an avalanche of massive short positions released to smash those 4 companies' stock prices through the floor. At the same time, cut off all their offshore hedging accounts. I want Carl, by sunrise, to go from an exalted baron to a beggar drowning in debt. Order confirmed. Scorched Earth Protocol. Finances activated. The quantum algorithm has locked onto the targets, and is expected to trigger the circuit breaker mechanism within 3 seconds of the open. Atlas's voice remained emotionless. Yet it pronounced the death sentence of a vast commercial empire. Also, where is Carl now? According to satellite thermal imaging and communications band tracking, the target is currently at the Eagle's Nest castle in the Swiss Alps. He is in an encrypted video conference with 7 senior deacons of the order. Patch them through to their conference channel. I straightened the collar of my trench coat, a cruel light flashing in my eyes. And while you're at it, beam my holographic projection into their conference room. It's time to say hello to my good uncle. A few seconds later, the safe house's screens flickered and switched to an extremely old-fashioned, luxurious castle conference room. Carl Thorne sat at the head of the long table, a glass of red wine in his hand, frowning as he listened to his subordinate's report. Baron, the cleanup team sent to New York has gone completely off the grid. In the screen on the wall, a clerical order steward said in panic. We didn't even receive any sign of a firefight. The 12 helicopters just vanished into thin air. Idiot! Carl slammed his wineglass onto the table. That genteel face of his looked somewhat feral with rage. How many tricks did that old dog Sarah's leave for that little brat? Activate Plan B immediately. At all costs. You must get the Imperial Sun back for me, uncle. 20 years gone and your temper hasn't changed. A deep, cold voice, as if from the abyss of hell, suddenly detonated in the middle of the castle's conference room. Carl jerked his head up, his pupils contracting instantly. At the far end of the conference table, a pale blue beam of light descended from nowhere. My holographic image sat there like a ghost, playing with the Imperial Sun he had longed for. Jaxson? Carl sprang up from his chair as if seeing a ghost. This can't be. How did you hack into the Order's absolutely encrypted network? Absolute encryption? In front of Atlas? Your network defenses are like they're made of paper. I leaned forward slightly and, through the holographic projection, stared straight into his eyes filled with panic. Uncle, I heard you were looking for me? And you even sent 12 helicopters as a welcome gift. To return your enthusiasm, I prepared a little present for you too. I snapped my fingers. The computer screen in front of Carl and the entire projection wall of the conference room were instantly replaced by a blood-red stock market index chart. Watch closely, uncle. In less than 90 minutes, your business empire will be reduced to ashes. Just like that avalanche 20 years ago. Carl was first stunned, then let out an arrogant scoff. Destroy my 700 billion empire in 90 minutes? Jaxson, you think that because you control the Atlas system you can issue orders like a god? I helped write Europe's financial rules. Behind me is the Order of Hermits, with a bottomless pool of funds. On what grounds do you dare challenge me? Is that so? I leaned back comfortably against the obsidian chair, fingertips lightly tapping the armrest. Then let's wait and see. Time passed minute by minute. On the holographic screens, the financial clocks of Frankfurt and London mercilessly ticked. At first Carl could still maintain that aristocratic composure, but as market open approached, several stewards from the Order of Hermits beside him began to receive a stream of jarring encrypted alerts. My Lord Baron, bad news. Our offshore funding moat is being shredded by an unknown quantum algorithm. Report. The Swiss National Bank has unilaterally frozen our credit lines. The reason? The system has suffered an unprecedented dimensionality reduction attack. Cold sweat finally ran down Carl's forehead. He lunged for the master control keyboard on the conference table, trying to manually activate the hidden order's highest defensive barrier, but the screen didn't respond. Only a cold, blood-red countdown. 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8. Dominic, I said without even looking at the screen, lifting a glass of bourbon from the table. Show them what a real tsunami looks like. As you command, my lord. Dominic Vance pressed the black confirmation key hard. 3, 2, 1. The opening bell rang simultaneously across Europe's major exchanges. Normally, this would mark the start of a frenzy of capital. But today, it was the death knell of the world. Karl's proud Rhine heavy industries and the three major energy oligarchs saw their stock price curves form a chilling vertical red line straight down in the first second after the open. No trading buffer. No room for resistance. The Grand Council's enormous liquid capital, accumulated over a century, struck Karl's seemingly impregnable commercial fortress like the starship's superlaser, unleashing a saturation bombardment. 30%. 50%. My God! Everything's hit the circuit breakers, an aide cried, clutching his head in despair. His voice gone shrill. Useless. Atlas's cold voice echoed through the castle. The short orders bypassed the conventional exchanges and completed an oversell through 128 dark web nodes. Every entity under Karl von Thorne's name has seen its P ratio fall below the floor. An irreversible debt snowball effect has formed. In just 3 minutes, $700 billion of wealth turned to dust. Karl collapsed into the ornate velvet chair. The color drained completely from his face. He was like a fish that had been drained of water, gasping for air, staring fixedly at my hologram. You destroyed the Thorne family's century-long foundations in Europe. You're a man. Foundations? They're stained with my parents' blood. I find them filthy. I stood up and looked down at him. This was only the appetizer. Uncle Karl, losing money is perhaps worse than death for someone like you. But I've always been merciful. So I've decided to return to you what you fear most. Karl shuddered violently, sprang up as if awakening from a deep dream, and yelled frantically at the guards outside the door. Guard squad! Helicopter! Launch the backup helicopter immediately! Escort me out of the eagle's nest! However, outside the heavy oak door of the castle, there was only deathly silence. Atlas, tell my good uncle about his current situation. Report to the leader. The intelligent defense core of the Eagle's Nest castle has been fully taken over by our side. All physical exits have been lowered with half-meter-thick titanium alloy blast doors. The castle's climate control system has been locked off, and the industrial-grade refrigeration system has been forcibly activated to maximum power. External communications and radar networks have been put into physical-level silence. Karl looked around in despair, accompanied by a dull mechanical roar. Layer after layer of heavy metal armor plates slid out from inside the walls, sealing every window of the castle shut and completely cutting off the alpine wind and snow outside. The conference room, which had once felt as warm as spring, began to drop in temperature at a visibly rapid pace, and the air he exhaled instantly turned into thick white vapor. 20 years ago, you seized power and let my parents freeze to death in the bitter snows of the Alps. My holographic projection began to dim, its voice like the judgment from the depths of hell. Today, I have prepared an extraordinarily luxurious ice coffin for you as well. This castle you're so proud of will be your tomb. Enjoy your very own avalanche. Uncle. No, Jaxson. You can't do this. I'm your uncle. Open the door. Let me out. As Karl's screams and the pounding on the door reached a peak of agony, I mercilessly cut the communication. The image on the big screen went dark in an instant, and the safe house number 1 returned to its tranquil bluish glow. Dominic stood behind me, his posture rigid, even his breathing barely audible. In his eyes, alongside profound reverence, there was an added trace of fear for absolute power. I turned and looked at the frozen faces of the other 7 high-ranking conclave ministers on the screen. Karl was merely a senior agent thrust into the spotlight. The ones truly controlling this underground assassination network, even once rivaling my grandfather, were those old vipers hiding in the shadows. Dominic, relay my highest orders to the Polaris Defense Group. I drained the whiskey in my glass. The cold liquor ignited a blaze down my throat, and murder glinted in my eyes. Deploy every orbital satellite, stealth fighter, and 200,000 heavily armed mercenaries. A global hunt officially begins. I want the name Conclave erased from human history completely before the sun rises tomorrow. 12 hours later, on the top floor of the Thorne building in Manhattan, dawn was just breaking. I stood before the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the city below as it came back to life. The bloodshed of last night left no trace under the warm sun. Reporting to the leader. Global hunt has concluded, Atlas's voice said. All 7 inquisitors of the cloister have been eliminated. The 3 trillion in assets and underground forces involved have been fully integrated into the Supreme Council's domain. No anomalies in the global situation. I nodded slightly, my expression calm. My lord. Dominic Vance pushed open the heavy obsidian doors. Behind him followed dozens of tycoons and political magnates from around the globe. These people, who usually control the lifeblood of nations on television news, now stood solemnly at the threshold, holding their breath and concentrating. Dominic came to my side, dropped to one knee, and presented with both hands a seal of kings carved from pure black crystal. My lord, the rebellion has been quelled and the order of hidden cultivation eliminated. 360 core organizations and global elites under the Supreme Council welcome the new king's ascension. May your will become the only law of this world. Behind him, those dozens of top rulers all knelt in unison, pressing their heads deeply against the marble floor. Hailed the leader's accession. The fanatical voices echoed 100 meters up. I didn't turn around. I only looked at the cold, powerful figure of myself in the glass reflection. I casually opened a drawer and tossed in the imperial sun that had driven Sterling and Elena to sell their souls. It mixed with a few ordinary paper clips, paling in comparison. The ultimate wealth they spent their lives pursuing was, to me, nothing more than sand for decorating power. I turned around and slowly sat on that throne that embodied the highest power of the world's dark side. Rise. I looked down at the power beasts kneeling all over the floor and said calmly, from today on, the Supreme Council will steer this age anew. My will is your only direction. Sunlight completely tore through the darkness and illuminated the throne. I am Jaxson Thorne, the only king in this world. And that's a wrap. Folks, if this story gave you that sweet dopamine hit and was more satisfying than peeling the plastic off a brand new TV, do me a massive favor. Obliterate that like button and hit subscribe. I'm locked in the content mine serving up fresh, ridiculously satisfying stories every single day. See you tomorrow for your next fix.